Welcome back to Four Tires and Fuel. My name's Cole Cusimano.
And I'm Ashton Register, and on today's episode, we're going to recap the Daytona 500, pick out some notable drivers from the Daytona 500 and talk about their performances, and then also look forward to Atlanta.
All right, green flag is out, so we're going to recap the Daytona 500. William Byron in the number 24 Exalta Chevy Camaro started from the pole. This was his first career pole in his first race with new crew chief Chad Knaus. Alongside him was Hendrick Motorsports teammate Alex Bowman in the number 88 Nationwide Chevrolet. It was a fairly uneventful race up until the last handful of laps. But lap 50, we did have an incident between Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and Kurt Busch. And it initially looked like Ricky Stenhouse got into the right or left rear of Kurt Busch. But upon further review, the air just kind of got sucked off of him. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, we kind of already knew going into the race that Ricky Stenhouse Jr. was going to cause a wreck here and there. But right, like what you said with the whole looking to review, I don't think there was any contact. Like the new cars and everything, you get so close it can suck the air out and just spin a car. So I really don't think that Ricky Stenhouse Jr. may have caused that per se wreck on lap 50, but the other wrecks going in past the race were caused by him.
Mm-hmm. In addition to the wreck or the incident between Stenhouse and Kurt, behind them, trying to avoid the wreck, was Tyler Reddick, and he ran into the back of Bubba Wallace, sending him into Kurt Busch, ultimately ending his chances at winning the Daytona 500. Interesting enough, Bubba Wallace took to Twitter after his day was over, voicing his displeasure for a rookie crew chief or rookie driver and rookie spotter in Tyler Reddick. Tyler Reddick rebutted on Twitter, calling him basically a crybaby, saying that he couldn't stop in time. There's no short track brake package on these cars, so there's not much you can do to get those things slowed down in time to avoid a wreck like that. Do you have any thoughts on that whole confrontation between them?
My opinion on the whole confrontation is that if you have an issue, I feel like you should take it up at the track. Joey Logano and Michael McDowell at the end of the race had some confrontation, but Joey Logano took it up at the track. They figured it out, and now they're on to the next race. I feel like if you take it on Twitter, other fans are going to get involved, and that's not what NASCAR racing is all about. You shouldn't, if you have an issue with a driver per se, just take it up in person. Be a big boy. Put on your big boy pants on and just talk to him. You guys are in your 20s and 30s. I think you should be able to talk it out face to face and not hide behind a phone. It really was an uneventful race after lap 50, with your stage 1 winner being Kyle Busch and then your stage 2 winner being Ryan Blaney. But the action really didn't start till lap 158. While coming on pit road for green flag stops, BJ McLeod got into the back of Cody Ware while spinning down onto pit road, which will cause a lot of issues. And Cody's Ware forcibly smashed Tyler Reddick's car, which sent him into Jimmy Johnson, taking parts of his rear bumper off. Also, with Cody Ware continuing to screech down pit road, he connected with the rear bumper of Ricky Stenhouse Jr., sending the 17 into the side of the 31 of Reddick. Johnson took most of the brunt from this incident, leaving almost the entire left rear quarter panel of his car exposed. Do you think there was miscommunication with rookies, with Johnson not pitting with Byron? What are your thoughts on that?
There was definitely a lack of communication from both areas, like you said, between Ware and McLeod. And then I think the biggest one for me is Johnson and Byron. I mean, these guys are running front to rear with each other. They're on the same team, same pit cycle. I don't know why they wouldn't communicate and come down to pit road at the same time to get on the same sequence, you know? And I guess you see it all the time at these tracks like Talladega and Daytona, where guys are going to miss their marks coming down to pit road. They'll hit the guy in front of them or speed coming in. So it doesn't surprise me there seeing these two rookies in the 500 get into each other. But it was really unfortunate for Jimmy Johnson because he had a great car. It really ruined his day, ruined his car aerodynamically. So just really unfortunate.
On lap 186, Brad Keselowski's left rear tire goes down. It really was only a single car spin with him that basically kind of took him out of the race, but he got back on the track and just kept going. But on lap 190, this is where the whole Daytona 500 got super interesting. If you are into racing but you only watch for the crashes, you should have watched the last 20 laps because there were 5 wrecks. So with the laps winding down, Menard barely tapped the right of Matt DiBenedetto, who was actually having a pretty good day you would have to say, for Levine Family Racing, basically racing in the top 5 the entire day. And he tapped Matt DiBetto's car, triggering the big one. Menard took full responsibility for it, but there was a lot of contenders that were taken out during the wreck. Most notably was Ryan Blaney, Austin Dillon, Ryan Newman, Eric Almirola, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Martin Truex Jr., and the list goes on and on and on. But what are your thoughts on the big one? Do you think Paul Menard made the right move at the right time, or do you think Matt DiBetto, he should have just left him and just kept racing and waited till less laps were?
Well, the fact of the matter is it was 10 to go, and with 10 to go, guys are getting really antsy. They've been playing it pretty safe the entire race. So these guys are going to want to make these aggressive moves to get a shot at winning the 500. It's unfortunate that the big one happened, but the fact that it came from Paul Menard in a very similar incident to the Clash where he blamed Jimmy Johnson for taking out the entire field, it just kind of stuck out to me because if you're going to make those comments on a guy like Jimmy Johnson, or I guess anyone for that matter, causing wrecks, you got to be really careful in what you do and how you go about racing people. I know there was no intention there, obviously, but coming to 10 to go, there's going to be wrecks. There's going to be a lot of chaos. So that's my take on the crash, honestly. So in the midst of all this chaos, one thing I noticed was Almirola, his car slightly went airborne for a second. David Reagan's car kind of shoveled underneath the rear of it, sending the rear of his car in the air. What are your thoughts on that, maybe?
It reminded me a lot of the crash that happened in Kansas 2 years ago with Eric Almirola, and his car got airborne, and he broke his back during it. And all I remember watching on TV was that they had to cut the entire car out just to get him out. So I was kind of afraid that that impact and him going up on David Reagan's car and then maybe dropping down would have caused another injury like that. But he is all safe and okay, and everyone in that wreck was okay too.
Yeah, NASCAR has come a long way in innovating their safety techniques with these cars and these drivers. So always great to see these drivers walk away safely from these wrecks. It's never something you want to see. It obviously adds excitement, but you never like to see those guys get put in danger, you know?
On lap 194, we all knew it was going to happen. We all know how Ricky Stenhouse Jr. drives on restrictor plate races, and he decided to force his way into the closing gap between Kevin Harvick and Kyle Larson, which sent them spinning into Chase Elliott and Alex Bowman. Ryan Pierce again nearly escaped this disaster. You had your opinion that Hendrick Motorsports was going to do awesome in this Daytona 500, but then he got taken out by Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Were you mad? Because you kind of saw it coming, in a sense.
You know, I was 100% expecting it, and I know Stenhouse was your pick as well, and I mean, it's a great pick. He's always good on these plate tracks because he takes out the entire field. But no, I wasn't surprised. Disappointed, yes, because these were all cars that had great shots at winning the 500. I mean, you got Chase Elliott, Jimmy Johnson, Alex Bowman, all these guys that were having great, consistent runs throughout the day, and then Stenhouse just makes another bonehead move, shooting the gap where he shouldn't have been going. And again, I know there was 6 to go at this point, so he's got to try and make a move for the win, but this was not the right time, the right place to do it.
Lap 199, Michael McDowell turned Clint Bowyer into William Byron while they were running 4, 5, and 6. Yes, it was one lap to go, and you would think that you would have to make that bold move, but that led to a green-white checkered finish. What were your opinions on all the wrecks, basically? There was 5 wrecks in the last 20 laps with 2 red flags. Do you think... I thought it was funny how they were brought up the full moon on Saturdays for short track races brought bad omens. Do you think it's a new thing with Sunday races with full moon bad omen?
Oh yeah, anytime there's a full moon, people are going to get crazy. These drivers are already amped up, being that it's the first race of the year, biggest race of the year. So yeah, that was pretty awesome. Great comparison with the full moon and all that. But, I mean, you expect it still. Like I said, laps winding down, biggest race of the year. People are going to do what they have to do to win. All right, and during this green-white checker, Kyle Busch and Denny Hamlin communicated during the red flag from the previous caution, or previous wreck. The plan was that Hamlin would take the top lane and then would pull in front of his Joe Gibbs Racing teammate Kyle Busch. The plan ended up working out in Joe Gibbs Racing's favor, as Hamlin held on to the lead, and Joe Gibbs Racing finished 1, 2, 3 This was the first time a team swept the top 3 positions in the Daytona 500 since Hendrick Motorsports in 1997. Before we get into this emotional victory for Denny Hamlin and Joe Gibbs Racing, let's do a quick rundown of the top 10 finishing cars. Winner of the race was Denny Hamlin. Second place was Kyle Busch, followed by Eric Jones, Joey Logano, Michael McDowell, Ty Dillon, Kyle Larson, Ryan Preece, Jimmy Johnson, and Ross Chastain. And only 14 cars finished on the lead lap of this race. So looking over this top 10, some things worth noting. Eric Jones was involved in quite a few incidents, ended up finishing third, which is pretty impressive. Michael McDowell, top 5 finish. Anytime that happens, it's always very impressive. Underfunded team, great guy, just really looking for that big break, and he may have found it in this Daytona 500. Ty Dillon 6th. Kyle Larson even got 7th. He got in quite a few incidents as well in the 500, so it's nice to see him kind of rebound, get that 7th place finish. Ryan Preece, Rookie of the Year contender. He escaped quite a few wrecks in this race, just barely, and that was just incredible to see. Jimmy Johnson finishing 9th, highest finishing Hendrick Motorsports car of the day. And then Ross Chastain, another Rookie of the Year contender, finishing top 10.
This was Denny Hamlin's second Daytona 500 victory and his first race with the new crew chief, Chris Gabehart, and this locks him into the playoff spot for the 2019. This was Denny's 32nd win, and it snapped a 47-race winless streak. But this race also had a very emotional factor for Joe Gibbs Racing. His son, J.D. Gibbs, passed away a couple weeks ago, and number 11 was his actual favorite number, and Denny Hamlin wanted to dedicate this season to him. And I feel going out with a win in the Daytona 500 is a very nice way to start out your season, but also if you're dedicating it to someone that passed away. This was a very emotional race for Joe Gibbs, and he also said this is probably one of the biggest wins he's ever had in his entire life. What do you think the impact of this win has on the racing community?
This win was huge not only for Joe Gibbs Racing and Denny Hamlin, but just NASCAR as a whole. J.D. Gibbs was a pioneer in crafting Joe Gibbs Racing, one of the most successful teams in the sport. He was a great presence throughout the garage area. He was the one that actually discovered Denny Hamlin. And even fourth-place finisher Joey Logano, he found Joey Logano and gave him a shot. Joey Logano even said he would not be where he is today without J.D. Gibbs. So I think this win was huge for the racing community. And it was just very emotional. You could see it on Joe Gibbs' face, Denny's face, even Kyle Busch in his post-race comments. He was definitely disappointed, but he was very happy that this was kind of a redemption thing for JD and a great tribute.
It was bittersweet for Kyle Busch, like you said, to finish second place, and he's 0 for 14 in 500 attempts. Thought it was really interesting saying that they have a place for the Daytona 500 trophy in his trophy case, but he may never win one, just like Tony Stewart never did. Do you think that Joe Gibbs Racing may win and keep winning Daytona 500s, and Kyle Busch may be a winner, or this may just be a race that he never wins in his race time?
It's kind of funny because Kyle Busch and Tony Stewart have very similar driving styles and personalities. I do believe Kyle Busch will win a Daytona 500 eventually. It's going to take a little bit of maturity on his part, because everyone knows he has a very bold personality. He likes to point fingers and place the blame on everybody else but himself.
Very rowdy.
Very exactly. Rowdy Busch. Yeah. But yeah, I think he'll get one eventually. And kind of piggybacking off of that, I know where they're coming from with team racing and just saving those race cars from damage and ultimately getting the win for the team. But I wanted to get your thoughts on this. Are you a fan of team racing, or would you prefer to see these guys make moves for themselves to win the race, even if it means one of their teammates not winning the race? Like say Kyle Busch went for the win, but Joey Logano ended up winning because they crashed or they just lost the draft.
I think it's every man for yourself in that point. Like you said, 10 laps to go. Yes, you want to connect with your Fords, your Toyotas, your Chevrolets, and your teammates to get that push. But honestly, I feel like every driver in their head is thinking, I'm going to win this race. It's all for myself. So they're going to make those moves that will help them win the race. Yes, maybe team racing may help with pitting strategies and talking the garage and everything, but I think when it comes down to actual racing, you should race for yourself. You're racing for your sponsor, you're racing for your team, but you're also racing for yourself, like I said. You should think about what your move should be next, not what your other teammates should do to help you get that move. You should do it for yourself.
Exactly, and especially when Logano voiced his displeasure to McDowell for not helping him make a run on Denny Hamlin for the lead. McDowell stated to Fox Sports journalist Bob Pockris that he's not going to push Joey Logano to a win. That's not what he gets paid to do. And at 200 miles an hour, he made a split-second decision on what was the faster car and where he had the best shot at winning the race, and that's where he went. And you know what? I agree 100% with Michael McDowell. Like I said, I'm not a big fan of the whole team racing thing. It's every man for himself. And for a guy especially like McDowell, you got to make these big aggressive moves to win these races. And for an underfunded team, what are your thoughts on this?
Like, just because he's a Ford and Joey Logano's a Ford, Joey Logano shouldn't bank on McDowell pushing him to the lead. That's not what NASCAR racing is about. McDowell is 100% okay with his opinion. I am 100% agreeing with his opinion. He doesn't get paid just to push Joey Logano. If he did, he would be behind the car pushing his car to the lead. That's not what he does. Michael McDowell needs to win a race, and he needs to do it, and he's going to make those decisions based on what's best for him. Joey Logano is a NASCAR champion. Michael McDowell does he have a win?
I don't think he has a win.
Doesn't even have a win. So Michael McDowell needs to do exactly what he needs to do to get a win. Joey Logano has these wins. He has a NASCAR championship. Michael McDowell doesn't have that. He's an underfunded team, like you said. He needs to do exactly what he needs to do to win a race. And that if that's what he feels like he was supposed to do, then he did it 100% like he was supposed to do.
Yeah, and I don't know if you saw these interviews after the race, but Michael McDowell was really fired up. It got me really amped. You saw him, right?
Like, a top 5 finish for Michael McDowell in a Daytona 500, that's amazing for him and his team. Like, I am super proud of them, and that may carry momentum into Atlanta and through the rest of the season. And like we said, he doesn't have a win yet, but maybe in 2019, maybe his season.
Mm-hmm, exactly. And then further on, McDowell even made a comment on the crash he triggered with Clint Bowyer, basically stating that he does not get enough respect on the track. And I think that's incredible for someone like him in his position to come out and state, because it's true. You have all these superstars out there, Jimmy Johnson, Kyle Busch, Brett Keselowski, all these guys that you think about as the stars of the sport, and they probably don't give any credit to these underfunded teams like Michael McDowell, like Matt DiBenedetto. And I think that's pretty incredible for him to come out and say that, and I really hope that he kind of shows this aggression further on in the season, whether it's making these aggressive moves, moving guys out of the way to demand that respect from his peers. He makes these aggressive moves on the track, but like in good measure, obviously. I don't want him to be like, 08 era Kyle Busch, just moving guys out of the way to win races, where they don't deserve it. But if he's not getting the respect he deserves, then by all means, absolutely go for it. You need to make a name for yourself in this sport, and you know what? He very well could. He showed up at Daytona.
Talking about making a name for yourself, I feel like Matt DiBenedetto did an awesome job with that. His odds going into the race, according to Vegas, were 200-1 to win the Daytona 500, and he was in the top 5, top 10 the entire race until, unfortunately, a wreck took him out. But he was racing for Levine Family Racing in the number 95 car, replacing Casey Kane after he retired. Tear. But he ended up leading 49 laps and was in contention the entire race. Do you think that Matt DiBenedetto can have a breakout year?
I think it's very possible. He's a guy in the garage area that a lot of guys have respect for. I know Dale Jr.'s vocally voiced his opinion on how great of a talent Matt DiBenedetto is if he's given the right equipment. Even other guys in the garage, Jimmy Johnson, Kyle Busch, they all have respect for this guy. And he's still really young. He has a lot of potential. I know Casey Kane couldn't really get anything done in the 95 car, but, he had those health issues, so it's understandable. It'll be really interesting to see what he does this season. I always say coming out of races like Daytona and Talladega to be cautiously optimistic, especially Daytona 500 because, it's the first race of the year. Everyone's amped up, and people tend to get carried away with the successes and maybe the not so much success of certain drivers coming out of the race. But, Daytona's a crapshoot. People are going to over exaggerate, being that we've just coming back from the off season. Um, and, typically you wouldn't see guys like DiBenedetto or McDowell, David Reagan, guys that had that super speedway success translate over to those following races after the 500. So cautiously optimistic, but I think there is a great chance that Benedetto does have a pretty solid season.
I feel like you always see this in Daytona 500s. You always have not random names, but just names that you never see finish in top 10 because there's always the big regs that take out every notable driver and then they just go into like their little top 20, top 30. I want someone like Matt DiBenedetto or Michael McDowell or Ryan Pierce to give these veterans a run for their money, or even William Byron. I feel like the veterans of this sport, everyone knows them, everyone knows their names, but maybe in 3 years, Matt DiBenedetto's name will be the next Jimmy Johnson, the next Kevin Harvick. Who knows? But I feel like Matt DiBenedetto has a really good chance in the 2019 season.
And you never know. Levine Family Racing could be the next Furniture Row Racing. I mean, you had Regan Smith who drove the 78 car, and then obviously Martin Truex took over that. Casey Kane had some minor successes in the 95. And then, you know what? Matt DiBenedetto went to Twitter after getting called out in a 200 to 1 odds to win the 500. He wanted to make a statement in this race, and he really, really did. 200 to 1 odds, this man led the most laps in the biggest race of the year, 49 laps in the Daytona 500. I'm going to look for him to be aggressive this season. I really think that he has a shot at getting these top 5 finishes again,
Another driver in contention for Rookie of the Year is Ryan Pierce. He took over driving duties of the number 47 Chevy Camaro, beautifully navigated his way through various wrecks, and ended up with an 8th place finish. Do you feel like he's a good contender for Rookie of the Year, that he's going to maybe get a win or get a couple top 10s and find his way into the playoffs, or do you think he's just going to have maybe an average rookie year like most rookies do?
Ryan Preece had a lot of success in the Xfinity Series. He's another guy that I feel like will have a William Byron type season in his rookie season, where he'll kind of be in the top 15 for a majority of the race, maybe even some top 10 runs, but he might not be able to close it out. There's just certain guys that I feel like were kind of rushed up to the Cup Series too early. Preece, Byron was a little bit. Even Alex Bowman, I feel like, was rushed up to the Cup Series. So I think he'll be there for a lot of the races, but I don't know if he can close it out. It'll be nice to see if he can do it or not. But I do believe he can be a Rookie of the Year, though. He's a good shot.
When you're talking about how they're being rushed up, I feel like NASCAR is trying to do that a lot, is where they're like Tony Stewart, Carl Edwards, Casey Kane, Dale Earnhardt Jr., they all retired, so they're trying to find that new star. So I feel like they're trying to raise all these Xfinity racers up to get them to be that next star, the next face of NASCAR, which we kind of already know Chase Elliott's kind of the new face of NASCAR. But I feel like that's what NASCAR is trying to do nowadays, is get all the younger drivers from the Xfinity that were running really well, that won championships down there, and stick them up to the Cup Series and hope that they do good or hope that something happens. But I know that Ryan Preece, he may win Rookie of the Year, but like you said, who knows what can happen. Also, William Byron started on the pole. His first points race with a new crew chief with Shaq and House. I wasn't really impressed with William Byron's run in the Daytona 500. I understand he led the second most laps with 44, but I feel like you started on the pole. You have Chad Knaus as your crew chief. I understand it's your second season, but I don't know. He kind of was just in the middle, and then I heard his name once and twice here and there, and then the big wreck took him out. But I know you have different opinions than I do.
Well, you know what? It's kind of funny because you are right. He should have ran a lot better starting from the pole. He led, I believe, 2 laps to start the race, then he fell back mid-pack, or I think actually to the back of the field. I don't know what happened there, if there was miscommunication with Bowman or something like that, but that was a little odd. But no, I think he did a pretty good job. He did a good job staying out of wrecks until obviously later on when all the madness started going down. but I still do believe this is going to be a great pairing with him and Chad Knaus, and I think that he will get a win this season. I don't know if he'll get more than one win, but I do think that he will be in contention quite a bit. I think he'll make the playoffs this year, and I think that he will get a win or two here and there in this season.
Looking forward to Atlanta Motor Speedway next weekend, the Folds of Honor Quick Trip 500 at 2 p.m. Eastern on Fox Sports. Kevin Harvick dominated that race last year with 181 laps, and that would begin Harvick's unbelievable start of the 2018 season with 3 wins in a row. Do you think Kevin Harvick is going to win this race again? Do you think he's going to have the same ability to lead 181 laps? Is he going to have the same dominant of force that he had with 3 wins in a row? Or do you think, yes, he may win, but it won't be as dominant as last season?
I mean, you never count Kevin Harvick out. One thing I will say is, going back to the last show, I do predict there's going to be a bit of a delay in performance from the Fords this season. Usually when they have these new body styles, there is a delay in performance. So I think Kevin Harvick will be one of those Fords that is up there contending for the win. I don't know if he will win the race, but I don't think we're going to see an abundance of Fords in the top 10, maybe like two or three. But yeah, he has a good shot to win. I'm not going to say he will, but yeah.
Talking about predicting who's going to win the race, the white flag is out, and that means we're going to give our predictions for the Atlanta Motor Speedway Folds of Honor Quick Trip 500. Who do you have for this race?
All right, just want to put a little disclaimer out here. We're making these predictions without any practice times, without any qualifying, so if we're really off, that's why. I apologize. I'm going to go with Martin Truex Jr. He's with Joe Gibbs Racing now. He had a lot of success with Furniture Row Racing, so I think moving to Joe Gibbs, he's going to be probably the favorite to win the championship, honestly. And he got a top 5 finish there last year. I think that he will improve on that and win this weekend in Atlanta.
No surprise, my choice is Kevin Harvick. He won last race. It sparked a 3-race win streak, and I feel like he has a really good shot. I read something on Twitter saying that he may have an issue. Maybe he had the same race wins as Kyle Busch last season, but he has a problem with passing post-race inspection, and I know that's a whole new issue where you can lose basically your entire race win. We can see with that happening. There's also a new rule package coming out and new splinter inches. We'll see how Kevin Harvick does, but I feel like Kevin Harvick may win the Atlanta Motor Speedway.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how all the drivers react to this new rule change in post-race inspection. Harvick, like you noted, was very, very aggressive in making these race-winning cars last year. He got docked quite a few points for failing inspection, so it'll be interesting to see if he takes these approaches again this year or if he plays it safe. Also, with in reference to the rules package, I think this is when we're going to get our first sample of what it's like, because Daytona, it's always the same thing, just pack racing or plate racing in general. You don't get a really good feel for that, but I think we're going to get a really good feel for what it's like after this race at Atlanta.
On February 22nd, the first practice for Atlanta is 11:35 a.m. Eastern on Fox Sports. Then you have qualifying also that same day at 5 p.m. February 23rd, the final practice at noon, and then the Folds of Honor Quick Trip 500 in Atlanta Motor Speedway is on February 24th at 2 p.m. on Fox Sports and Fox Sports Go app. That's all we have for this episode of Ford Tires and Fuel. I'm Ashton Register.
I'm Cole Cusimano. Thank you for listening.